Hi, my name is Tammy Speidel, and I'm here to discuss Montessori's approach to learning. The question is, how did her observations change her ideas about the education of children? The things that I got out of the article, that she observed that children enjoyed working on a task if the task interested them. She observed that they could self-discover learning if the correct answer was built in. And she observed that children enjoyed being challenged by the difficulty of acquiring new information and quickly lose interest if the instructor takes over to do a step for them, rather than allow them to have the time that they need to struggle, to process, and to succeed. The benefits and limitations of her methodology. What I felt were the strong elements in her methodology are in how it builds a child's concept of concrete properties. It builds their focus and concentration abilities, and it builds their self-esteem. The children from the article said that they are pleased with what they have accomplished by their own efforts and reasoning. She also lets the children lead their own learning and by their interests and at their own pace, which I think is very important in education, is for children to lead their own learning. And she allows the children to work independently and with large uninterrupted work periods, which I also think is very important to children. She puts the teachers in the role of facilitators, not the leaders, in the child's learning. Her methodology that appears to have limitations is she's limited in her creative use of objects. The article didn't expound on imaginative play or art experiences included in her classroom, nor did it seem to include time for purely pleasurable expressions, such as when a child might grab a scarf and just begin to dance. In consideration of her materials, I did like her choice of items from nature and the sensory items. One limitation I noticed in materials is she uses is in the lack of open-ended materials, which have no right way to be put together. These foster creativity and experimentation and imaginative play in children. What did the observation change in how Montessori teachers taught reading? She taught children the process of reading first through sensory activities. Children as young as 18 months would begin to use their fine motor skills with sensory materials and would graduate up to sandpaper letters and movable alphabet letters when they were ready. The children would progress at their own pace, according to their interest. The phonetical letter sounds would be added to their constructive letter shapes. They were learning to read really 2 years before they started to read by having these multisensory experiences with the letters and the letter sounds, all by their own interest and by their own leading. When they graduated up to reading, they already had a vast history and familiarity with the components of the alphabet, so it made learning to read easy. Examples of sensory learning that I have observed in my classroom experience through this class. The kindergarten classroom I have been observing has actually very few sensory examples of learning. Most of the learning has been two-dimensional, stories, worksheets, and predetermined craft projects. The observations that I have made have been in my own program. In my preschool program, we have a variety of small items which develop fine motor and eye-hand coordination. We have different three-dimensional letter-making sets so the children can develop a special relationship with the letter's character. And since we don't use any worksheets and the children use their time since we don't have any worksheets, the children spend all of their time working with three-dimensional materials. So in that way, I guess their whole day is spent with sensory learning, touching and manipulating and observing, making their own observations, so they're using their eyes and experimenting.